U.S. Navy official tells me that they now believe that one shooter, at least one shooter, is dead. That is the word he says that he expects law enforcement authorities to make public shortly. So that information appears to have developed in the last few minutes. As to this question of whether there are multiple shooters, a different Navy official who works at the Navy Yard, Ed Ziegler, he says that they believe there are two shooters down. He's not saying what that means, dead or wounded or in custody, but two shooters down. Now, let's try and help people understand why there may be this conflicting information. We're here at the Pentagon, senior Navy officials here at the Pentagon getting word from law enforcement, from Navy officials at the scene, at the yard. Information very difficult to confirm for them. They're being very cautious, very deliberate about what they are telling reporters. They want to make sure they get it right. And that is why this one senior Navy officer telling me one shooter is dead. The word about two shooters being down coming from officials on scene at the yard. We expect, of course, much of this to be resolved when the police department shortly comes out and has their press conference. Also, several wounded. They believe there are several wounded and several fatalities. Then they will be discussing that in further detail. But as we see so often in these incidents, people start using a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics. These are families. These are people involved in all of this. Families, of course, watching. So we want to be very careful about what we say. We want to make sure we're absolutely as precise as we can possibly be. And at this hour, the information's still changing, still fluid, trying to get the facts as fast as we can, Wolf.
These kinds of shooting incidents, Barbara, correct me if I'm wrong, at U.S. military bases across the United States, they're pretty extraordinary. They don't happen very often. Of course, Fort Hood, Texas, a lot of us remember that incident, but this is pretty extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, it is. Look, they do happen, of course, as you say. Not very often, not of this magnitude, and certainly here in the nation's capital, perhaps a mile or two from the White House, a mile or two from Capitol Hill, grabbing the attention of everyone this morning. We are only a few days past the 9/11 attacks here in Washington, D.C. This is a city that is well-trained and well-practiced with local law enforcement, FBI, local police department, the U.S. military across this city in responding to these kinds of crises. If there are two shooters, Wolf, if that proves to be correct, it is going to be the most significant fact. It is going to mean that two people conspired to carry out this attack, that they talked about it ahead of time, that they planned it ahead of time, even if it was just a short period ahead of time, that they had a plan to do this. How anybody managed to do this at the Washington Navy Yard is the question to be addressed. Look, you have to have clearance. You have to have an escort if you don't work for the Navy. If you work for the Navy, you have a sticker in your car that lets you on. I don't think it's a stretch to say that security measures can be gotten around. You could have all the authority in the world to be on the installation, and if you have a weapon in your car, security personnel at the gate might not, probably would not know that. So these are all the issues that will be looked at. How did one gunman, possibly two, we don't know that yet, get past security, get into the Navy Yard? But once they got into this building, Wolf, within that building, we are told adamantly there are multiple layers of security in that building because they carry on a good deal of classified work. If you want to go into certain areas, you have to have a pass, computer, swipe yourself into the area. You have to be authorized. There's security at the doors. So this is just a very big mystery at the moment. Something that law enforcement and the U.S. military, as well as the FBI, is going to want to figure out as quickly as they can, Wolf.
Obviously, indeed, the situation still unfolding, details coming in. Once again, the president was supposed to speak a few minutes ago. He's obviously running a little bit late. He's over at the White House. You see at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, the podium there inside the White House. He wants to speak about the financial crisis here in the United States 5 years later. Today marks 5 years since the collapse of Lehman Brothers, other major U.S. financial institutions, the start of that deep recession where the country has moved over these last 5 years. We're awaiting the president. Maybe he'll open his remarks with some comments about this unfolding drama not very far away from where he is at the U.S. Navy Yard in Washington, D.C.